Morning.
So one of you has a copy?
Was on the table.
I'll grab it.
All right, folks, thanks for dialing in and joining us here in the conference room. We're just going to get started in a couple minutes.
I don't like being that close. That phone is here. Oh.
We'll be starting in just a minute. Good morning and welcome to the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange or Nevada Health Link. If you're a consumer, carrier onboarding sessions. It is April 17th and we are on the session regarding, what are we talking about today? Reconciliation reporting file transfers. The first thing I'd like to start off, is roll call. Can I get one person from each carrier to identify themselves? I think in the room here we have Hometown Health. And online?
Hello, Anthem is here.
Anthem?
Guardian.
Guardian?
Liberty Dental.
Liberty Dental?
United.
United?
Nevada.
Coventry Healthcare.
Coventry?
Nevada Health Co-op.
Co-op? Anybody else?
Nevada Dental Benefits.
Nevada Dental Benefits? Anybody else?
Yeah. It's Fred Horowitz from Nevada Dental Benefits as well.
Any other carriers represented? Okay, so we have Hometown, Anthem, Guardian, Liberty Dental, United, Coventry, Nevada Co-op, Nevada Dental Benefits. So first of all, the last meeting, I think there was some concerns. We could kind of tell by the tone of some of the questions and speaking with some of you afterwards, there were some major concerns about some of the things that we're doing. So first off, the conversations that we're having here over this next several weeks and what we've been having, they are not meant as a this is how Nevada is doing it. I mean, we would like to be as close to, we're moving forward as possible. But we also want to make sure that you, the carriers, are comfortable with what we're doing and are willing to participate. We don't want to drive you away because of some silly thing that we might have done that we didn't realize that we've done. So I've got a lot of good feedback from several of you since the last meeting via email and some over the phone. Please let us know if something is a is a major concern. What I would ask that when something is a concern to you, that you try to consider it from the perspective of guaranteed issue on the individual side and how the new market will affect the decisions. We're trying to be as aware as possible of how you do business now, and we're trying to fit that into how business will be done in 2014. We recognize that you are each separate entities and have your own way of doing business. However, the demands of keeping records for APTC and tax purposes and determining enrollment and eligibility kind of shakes things up a bit. And so we want to make sure that we do this right. We want to make sure that you're comfortable with us, but we also need to be somewhat efficient. I'd like to say as efficient as possible, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with our efficiency. So there's a lot. It's a balancing act. So what I would, please continue the questions. We will continue to answer them to the best of our ability. And just because we answer a question one way doesn't mean that that's the final answer. Again, this is supposed to be a dialogue, and we really appreciate your feedback. Please don't look too harshly on us. I also realize that we are, the government, and so it's the government said this, the state of Nevada said that. Again, we're trying to work with you as partners. I don't know how to say it any other way, but I want you to understand that so that we can move forward in the manner that's best for everybody. One of the things that I would like to talk about briefly was a discussion, I believe it started actually 2 weeks ago, about terminations for non-payment in the non-APTC world. The regulations at the federal level are very specific, that you have to wait 90 days, and I think it's 95 days or however that goes, but in any event, you have to wait a very specific amount of time. If there's no payment, you have to terminate back to the 1 month after the full payment. So, we can't get around that. There are federal regulations that we have to go by. The terminations for non-payment for non-APTC folks, it is our intent to follow the state rules. And there was concern that the 30 days is too long. And so I've seen concerns about it, but what I would really appreciate is if you have concerns, not just that it's a concern, but how you do it so that we can provide how we should do it. So how far do you go? If we're billing, I believe it's around the 10th of the month prior to the month of coverage, and the bill is due on the 1st of the month. I think that's fairly standard. And if not, you can let me know. But at that point, what, and I'm not asking for it right now. Just send me an email. That's because we're kind of off topic for today's discussion. But please send me an email on this is how our organization does it. These are the time frames so that we can look at it, figure out what's right for everybody, and provide a recommendation that isn't perhaps, so insulting or so unworkable in your eyes. So again, we're trying to work with you. Any other issue, please let us know, but I would really appreciate if you say, this is the problem and this is how I would fix it. Because otherwise, if we don't know how to fix it, we're providing these recommendations based on our view of how things are supposed to go, and a little bit on how choice works in California, but California is not Nevada, and we recognize that, and so we need to make sure this works for Nevada. So again, please send me your information on that. And with that, one more thing from Damon. Actually, yes. So there is a new email address, carriers@exchange.nv.gov. If you have tried to send me anything in the last week, you've noticed that I'm not getting back to you very quickly. Things have gotten swamped with legislative session and all the other things going on. So rather than sending to me, please send it to carriers@exchange.mv.gov. That email is forwarded directly to Damon Haycock, our Finance and Research Officer, who I've put in charge of carrier onboarding from the Exchange staff side, and to the Choice team itself so they can answer the questions. We've asked them to respond to the question directly in the email and then also include it in the consolidated Q&A. We think that's the right way to go about this for customer service. You ask a question, we answer you, and then we also provide that answer to everybody else as well. If you are not getting responses, still, you've got my email address, jhager@exchange.mv.gov. Feel free to continue to send me emails. I will get back to you as quickly as possible, but I do understand the time-sensitive nature, and we need to make sure that you're getting your responses as quickly as possible as well. Again, while I try to get back to you between the hours of 10 p.m. and 12 a.m., it doesn't always happen. So I want to make sure you get your responses. Was there anything else?
Yeah, again, this is Damon Haycock from the Exchange. Also on our carrier onboarding site, we have posted the updated carrier consolidated questions and answers as of yesterday afternoon. Unfortunately, I think I gave them the wrong information. They put it underneath the presentations area. I'll have that moved today. It'll be under the questions and answers, but that should address all of the questions that were asked as of April 3rd and April 10th. As far as we have been able to develop those answers, there are still a couple of them that we're researching, and we want to make sure that we provide the most accurate response to those questions. And then I've already started receiving some questions from the carrier onboarding, or excuse me, the carriers at exchange.mv.gov email. And so we will be looking at those over the next day or so, and then getting you responses to those that we can provide immediately. And they will be then again updated on that consolidated questions and answers. And you'll see that there will always be a date next to that, so you'll know how soon it was updated, and you'll be able to keep track with that. We're just going to keep updating that one document.
So we would like to be able to update that. Our goal is to update that on a weekly basis, and that any change that happens in that document is highlighted in yellow so you can easily see what's new in the document from the previous version of it. And I think that, so then the other three question and answers that are on there will go away because we've got the consolidated item. We will also include, just so that you're aware, I think we made some minor updates to the April 10th presentation. I'm not sure if we posted that yet.
Yes.
We posted that? All right, so that was posted as well. Are there any questions about any of that?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Lisa Kelly from Anthem.
Go ahead.
And just on one of the first items you went over that you kind of were closing out on the payments and the delinquency period, or grace period, I should say. I just wanted to make sure I was clear. So you're saying that regardless, someone goes into the grace for the 3-month grace, and they make a payment, but it's not enough to pay it all, and then so they do that in, like, maybe they went into grace on April 1st, and then they paid April and May, but that's not enough to pay it all because they still owe for May, and then they pay May and June. You guys, and then they never pay June. What you're saying is you are going to retro-term them back to the end of the first month of grace, even though you've received May's payment. You're saying you have to go back and terminate it back to the end of that first month, and then you would refund the money to the consumer. Is that what I heard?
You know, I think that's we would refund anything after the termination date. I think the problem is that the federal regulations are pretty specific about if they don't get completely caught up by that 90th day, that they're retroactively termed to the end of the first month, and so if they actually end up paying for that first month, I think it's appropriate that money gets distributed to each of you. But they don't have coverage after that first month, so I think that would have to be refunded to them. Is that how we interpreted the regulation, Chad? Yeah, I think that's. And if there's a different interpretation out there, great. But it was pretty specific, I thought.
I think I need to go back and read it again. I think there was the word May was in there somewhere, M-A-Y. I'll have to go back and read it again. But I just wanted to make sure I was clear what you said you guys were moving forward with. I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Lisa, if you think that we're doing it incorrectly, please send me an email and show us where so that we can look at it and reevaluate.
Okay, and it could have been something in the issuer letter, too, that I saw. So let me go back and I'll dig back through that stuff.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Chad.
With that, we'll go ahead and jump to the topic at hand. Run through some quick introductions here for the folks that are on the phone. My name is Chad Hogan, Senior Vice President, Choice Administrator, Exchange Solutions. With me as well, I have Steve Huynh, who's Vice President of Operations on the Choice Xerox team. John Hager and Damon as well are here from the Exchange. In addition, we have some technical folks who are not in the Carson City office but have joined us on the phone. Lloyd Bamalagian and Balaj Murajian, who are our EDI technical folks. We had indicated on one of the prior sessions that we would have some EDI technical folks on the call to answer specific EDI questions. Just want to confirm that you gentlemen are in fact on the line here with us.
Yes, we are.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, so the topic at hand today, as John mentioned, is going to be the reconciliation, reporting, and integration and file transfers. So we're going to start off talking about the reconciliation. We're going to be going through the deck that was posted last week to the Exchange Carrier onboarding site. And having gone through the agenda, slide 3, we're going to move on to slide 5 and start looking at reconciliation. So in general, reconciliation will occur on a monthly basis. The Exchange will send a monthly 834 full file to the issuer in order for the issuer to reconcile enrollment. It will be the responsibility of the issuer to review and resolve internal discrepancies within their systems against the membership records provided by the Exchange. Any remaining discrepancies should be communicated to the Exchange for review and reconciliation. The Exchange will then take necessary corrective action, report those actions and comments back to the QHP issuer for resolution. So, at a high level, the Exchange will be providing a membership, a complete listing of the membership as the Exchange system is the membership of record to each of the issuers. The way that we envision the process working is that you then, as an issuer, take the records that the Exchange has provided and validate those against your membership system. Ideally, in an ideal world, we should both match. We know that for some reason you may have a premium discrepancy that was reported or a member eligibility discrepancy that was reported. We would expect the issuers to delineate that into a reconciliation template that will be provided and report those discrepancies back to the Exchange. The Exchange will take the responsibility of validating those discrepancies and determining where that discrepancy lies, whether it's a discrepancy that is in the Exchange system and for some reason we have it incorrect, or if we see that as a discrepancy on the issuer side and will provide the appropriate documentation, either the confirmation of the date of when the EDI was sent with maybe that change, or reference material that we have on our side indicating why the premium was indicated as such for that member. So that's in a nutshell the discussion. Any questions about that before we talk about premium, and then we'll go through all of the flows and kind of walk through those here in the next couple of slides.
Yes, I do have a question. For the reconciliation discrepancy template, is it a normal Excel file that we'll be using?
Yes.
And by what date Exchange will be providing that template to all the carriers?
So we'll be providing that to the carriers when we do the individual carrier sessions so that we can talk about it in more detail with each carrier, because some carriers may want to modify the template slightly to accommodate their systems or their view of the information. So we want to be able to, the template is a suggested template. Fields can be added or removed based on what each carrier wants.
Okay. One last question. Do we know when the individual carrier session will be coming up?
So right now we are actively engaging with issuers who have contacted the exchange with their primary contact information and are coordinating the scheduling of that directly with those issuers.
So,
Okay, thanks.
so please send an email to carriers@exchange.nv.gov and let us know who you would like on those meetings and when you'd like to start them. We are ready to go.
Okay, great to know that. Thanks.
Now, I can't say we have all the answers to all your questions, but we can start at least. And who is this that was just speaking?
Raj Puri from Coventry Healthcare.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, and this is Adrienne from Anthem. Deepak, can you pose your question, please?
Yeah, my question. Deepak here from Anthem, and my question is, like, basically when the reconciliation happens and we find the differences and they are notified to exchange, who is going to do the updates, or how we visualize updates will be happening to resolve that discrepancies?
So we can talk to that a little bit as we go through the flow. But Steve, do you want to
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that. So depending on what the discrepancy is, we will the updates will either be made in the exchange by the exchange or the carrier. So definitely, if it's an error from the exchange's system, we will update the record on the exchange file and either send or resend an 834 EDI to correct that enrollment. If it's discovered that it's an error on the carrier side, we will communicate that back through the Excel spreadsheet and let the carrier know that. Say you're missing dependent enrollment, we will communicate that on this 834 file on this date that enrollment was sent, and then you can look at the file that you received to validate that and then update your system.
How will the carrier send the Excel? Is there an email to a specific email address?
Yeah, so what we would like to do is set up a point of contact both at the carrier and the exchange. So we will provide you a point of contact for our exchange reconciliation team, as well as we would like to get a point of contact from the carriers for the individuals that will be handling the reconciliation on that end, so that they could communicate on a daily, weekly basis as necessary. We found in the past that sometimes it's better just to have that open point of contact so that phone calls can be made or secure emails can be sent back and forth.
Thanks. So Deepak here from Anthem. For my understanding, clear understanding, so are we saying that if the dependent is missing, let's say from carrier side, but the actual record on the exchange side is correct, then are we expecting carrier to fix or somehow manually, or maybe using that old file which we got?
So in our discrepancy log, if we show that we have previously transmitted that enrollment via an 834, we will indicate the date that was sent. The expectation would be that the issuer would go back and pull that 834 file to update their systems accordingly.
And you'll also get the monthly full file as well.
Right, but in your blurb and under monthly and monthly, it says the QHP issuer will review and resolve internal discrepancies. All remaining discrepancies should be communicated to the exchange for reuse. So it almost seems you're saying if you guys know it's a discrepancy and you know how to fix it, go ahead and fix it. But if you can't resolve without us, then you'll be working with us. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's correct. It's not so much in that case, but what we found, and this is just based on Choice's experience throughout the years, is that what the carriers will find is that somehow that file didn't get loaded correctly in their system, or some carriers are actually manually loading the EDI file up into their system, so they have data entry errors. So what they do is they reconcile on their side first and make sure that what they have in their system is accurate based on the full file, and then they'll report back anything that they cannot resolve internally. And so then we'll take that file and we'll validate and make sure, hey, did we send that information correctly? Did we miss sending that information? Whatever it is, and then we'll resolve the issue and communicate back. So it's a collaborative effort, both from the carrier and the exchange.
And have you guys looked at what the FFE model, where they've landed on reconciliation, and considered possibly following their model?
So we've looked at that in brief, but we have looked at that, and to me it seems a little bit complex. From what I gather, they're suggesting a dual reconciliation of files back and forth.
No, it's not really dual. What they're doing is we're supplying them with our full file, and they're going to identify all the discrepancies based on them being the source of truth.
Okay.
And either send us 834 transactions to update so we are in sync. They are saying that they'll send a file to us, and if the carrier chooses to look at, validating or reviewing discrepancies and identifying them, but it's more of a choice on the carrier's part, on the issuer's part. They're not really we're not going to be sending another file back to them and saying, here's our discrepancies, let's try to sync up. They're really the owner of it, and they are going to drive it.
So what you're saying is that we send an initial file, and then you say there's a problem with a record, and then we fix that?
No, we're with the FFE. We're going to send them a full file. Okay, they're going to take it. They're going to compare it. They're going to find discrepancies. They're going to either look at see if they need to update their systems based on maybe the term for non-payment that they don't have in sync with us, or they will look at, say, the issuer is not in sync, and they're going to send us 834 transactions so we can automatically update our systems. And then if there's any discrepancies that they just can't resolve without interaction between them and us, they will follow up with that particular issuer to try to resolve that discrepancy that they can't do on their own. And then as a informational more type deal, they're saying if they will send a full file to the issuers, and if the issuers want to do their own discrepancy processing and, kind of sync up with what the exchange is sending or had identified as discrepancies, they can do that, but they're not going to have this kind of like circle going round and round and round. It's more of a courtesy full file from them to us than it is really part of the process for identifying discrepancies.
So just so it sounds like it's kind of the reverse of what we're doing.
It's basically the reverse of what you're doing, and the reason why they are going that way is because, really honestly, they're the source of truth, not the issuers.
Well, yeah, and I think you also hit on one of the other key parts is they're not managing billing. So they don't know when you have terms for non-payments or things like that, which requires them to reconcile back to your system from a billing standpoint.
Right. So you guys even actually more of a source of truth than they are.
Right.
Yeah.
So and just
you are even more so the source of truth than the FFE is because of that piece. And so the reason why they pulled it is because 98% of the time they are the source of truth, and so they're now doing the discrepancy processing on their side, and then automating it somewhat so it doesn't have to be so manual by sending 834 transactions based on what they've reconciled back to the issuer. So the issuer isn't doing like a manual update. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I didn't know if you guys had. It's gone back and forth so many times, and who knows who's looked at what. But that's where they've landed. Now they just had a issuer call on Monday, and I think they're pretty firm, and that's what they're going to do now.
All right. So
ROB. And especially Deepak here from Anthem, and especially if you're talking about corrections on both sides, I think that adds more complexity and more chances of discrepancies.
okay, so we will. So we're going to go.
Favor.
We're going to continue.
A favor.
If you have having separate conversations, please put the phone on mute. We're going to continue with this presentation as it's written because this could obviously impact a lot of the presentation. So let's stipulate that we're going to go forward right now with what we've got in the presentation. We will take another look at this just to confirm what the best course of action is. I'm not saying that what the FFE is wrong, but the FFE folks are building this from scratch. I don't know what kind of consultants they have on it because they live in a black box that nobody can look into. And so the reason that we chose Xerox and Choice is because they have had 15 years of doing this with carriers. Again, it's California, not Nevada, so I realize that it's different out here. And so I think that they have evolved to a point where they think that these are good recommendations. Again, I'm not saying that they are the perfect or the best recommendations. So what I'd like to do is say, let's pretend everything Choice says regarding that issue is correct. For the purposes of this presentation, we will go back and look at that issue and come back to the group next week. Will that work for you?
Yeah, that sounds good. And there is a document that, in case you want to take a look at the most recent presentation that CMS did. There is a PowerPoint presentation they did last Monday.
Is this Lisa Kelly from Anthem?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I want to go ahead and, still on slide 5 here, we're going to move to bullet number 2, which is the monthly premium reconciliation. So this kind of goes back into that same flow. We've talked about some of these topics here, just kind of ad hoc, but the expectation is that the issuer should report incorrect premium received to the exchange on a monthly basis. So again, this is going back to that monthly full file feed. And if there is a belief on the issuer side that the exchange is billing the incorrect premium, that would be reported to the exchange on a monthly basis. However, there is a timing element to that. And the timing element that we have found works well is that the premium be reported based on a 90 days in arrears. And this allows for the proper amount of time for premium transfers based upon various business rules. You know, we have grace periods, we have adding and terming dependents, we have all these kind of business rules and processes that happen that span multiple billing periods. When looking at that from what process works today, we find that it's best to do that reconciliation about at roughly that 90 days in arrears, so that we are accounting for the majority of business rule type decisions that create discrepancies in premium. So that is the recommended process. It's one that we have found works well. Again, as we are evaluating this, we welcome feedback in regards to that process, so that while it's still it's still every month, it's done 90 days in arrears to account for those business processes.
So I'm sorry, this is Lisa again. I know I talk too much, but so I just want to make sure I understand this. So you're saying that the process itself, so if I'm 30 days in arrears, we're really not going to look at it and validate that? I guess I'm just a little confused. Are we saying we're only going to go 90 days when it's an incorrect premium and then review it? I'm having a hard time translating this 90-day thing and why we're not, kind of tracking on a monthly basis. If we're going to do this kind of monthly premium recon between us and the exchange, the issuers and the exchange, why we're not being more timely with that when we're talking about people's policies being terminated and other things for like non-payment. So I'm just trying to get my arms around that. What does that? I still don't understand what it means.
So perhaps the 90 days in the rears wasn't the appropriate language to use, but just to explain it in a different way. So what we're looking at is, for example, in our example here, so if you're reconciling in the month of April, what we're saying is reconcile the month of January premiums in the month of April. Because if you try to reconcile the month of April's premium in the month of April, you're going to have things like pending payments. You're going to have things like pending adjustments for adjustments that didn't make that last invoice that just came over. So you're going to increase, and we've have conducted the analysis on this. You're going to increase the reconciliation volume by seven times. So instead of having 100 items to reconcile, you have to reconcile 700 items. So we're just saying that the 90 days in arrears is best practice from what our experience is. Now we can look at 60 if that sounds a little bit appealing, but that is best practice from what we've been doing at Choice.
So,
Yeah, and I guess the only reason I'm even bringing this up is that for some reason, we're looking at someone and we think they haven't paid anything, and we're waiting, and they, even for somebody who is going to be termed after 30 days, and we don't really reconcile to see that you really did have a payment, and for whatever reason we didn't get it, that there's exposure on claims payments, and what is the issuer supposed to do if they think somebody's in arrears and nothing has happened? That's where I just get a little concerned with the
Well, don't forget
late
we're also
recon.
reconciling enrollment, and so the enrollment that we're showing should match the enrollment you have. So the premium is a separate issue. So the members, if we show the members active, they should be active, and they're in their grace period for making payment. So if we're showing them active and you're not showing payment, then the person should be active. And if we're going to then reconcile 90 days in arrears, we will either send you the money or be collecting the money from the individual.
So, Steve, this is basically that 90-day reconciliation period has evolved over the last 15 years that Choice has been in existence. And so the carriers that you do this with have bought off on this because they feel that you're doing the appropriate work for enrollment and stuff like that, right?
Correct.
So in this case, we're saying we're the government, trust us. Right?
Yeah.
I say that tongue in cheek. I understand that there is a lot of trust involved, and it may make sense to start with, probably especially in the earlier portion of this, to start with a more frequent reconciliation, or not more frequent, but a closer reconciliation, and work our butts off with the extra 7 times workload so that you can feel comfortable with us and we ease into that 90-day period. Now this 90 days, is this a recommendation to the carriers for their reconciliation, or how does this work? How does this fit between the relationship between the exchange and the carriers?
So this is a recommendation for the carrier. Now, obviously, if they report on things that are 60 days or 30 days in arrears, we're going to report back things like pending payment,
In grace period,
payment
yeah.
sending on the next EDI.
Okay.
So there's going to be a lot of that back to them. So when they're saying, okay, these are payments we're missing, and they do it 30 days in arrears, we're going to send a lot of communication back is customer hasn't paid yet.
Okay.
So you're going to have a lot of those items, and so based on our experience, we were saying, to exclude those types of items, it's better to do the 90 days in arrears. Now,
So are we going to do any reconciliation between us and exchange and the issuers where, what if you show me that I'm just making this up, you're advancing a paid-through date, but yet I have received no payments because you've been sending the payment for Lisa Kelly to a different carrier because they have a Lisa Kelly. So those payments have been going somewhere else. So although you're showing advancing paid-through date and the person's in good standing, my records are saying they're in arrears.
Right. So initially we should have a process. That type of error should not happen, but if it does, those types of errors should be corrected systematically.
Yeah, and I agree with you, they shouldn't happen, but we all know we've all got a lot of work to do.
Yep.
Right.
No.
I hear you.
And, in that case, you're going to have an issuer who is reporting that we are receiving premium, which is the third bullet point under monthly premium, which is premiums received with no enrollment record, should be reported to the exchange daily as necessary. So what we have there is that recommendation that if you are that issuer and you're going through your 820 and you go, I have a payment, but I don't have a corresponding person to post that to, that should be raised as an immediate flag to the exchange so that we don't get ourselves into an issue like that. Now, you're right, it could happen. We do have a compensating control in there that we've asked the issuer who received the funds that they can't account for to report it. But in that case, that's part of the reconciliation process where we go back to the other issuer and say, apparently we sent you payment. You don't have a Lisa Kelly on file. We are going to net that premium back out, and we need to assign that to the appropriate issuer. And that's part of the reconciliation.
Because we were kind of looking at it when you send us in 834 telling us that I don't know I'm assuming you're going to tell us to advance pay through dates, and if we haven't received any payment, we were wondering that, we may want to hold until we actually get a payment in hand before we start advancing pay through dates, but.
And one of the things I think the carriers have to look at too is, we want to reconcile more than the 90 days, closer than the 90 days, because we want to start putting those claims payments on hold if they haven't paid. So if it's 60 days, if they haven't paid us premium, we don't want to pay their claims at that point in time.
Well,
yeah.
Hold them.
And so when we don't receive payment, I believe it's on the 834 file that would say they're in a pending status, or they're in a grace, they're in a non-payment stat, right?
So the 834 is only going to go over at initial enrollment, or if there's a change to the policy. So the only thing that's going to go over on a monthly basis is the 820. The 820 will provide the new premium. If you don't receive the premium, then there will be no record on that. So you would know they're delinquent because we haven't sent you the payment.
Question though, monthly enrollment says we'll send a monthly 834 file to the QHP for reconciliation.
Yeah, you're correct.
So you're going to send an 834 and it's going to say
that's right.
where they're at.
Right.
The 834, it would show, yes, correct.
So it showed that
The full file.
does the 834, so if somebody has not paid, so it's March, or it's April. They paid through March, they have not paid April. How is a carrier notified that the exchange has not received payment for April yet? They're in that first 30 days of grace period.
So the whole paid through date is a new concept. It's not something we've passed over to the carriers in the past.
Okay.
So I guess my question is what are the carriers planning to do with that paid through date? Because it's not something we've used in the past. We will be passing that over. The way the carriers have been reviewing the payment is that if they receive payment, it's considered paid. Carriers are not using the payment as a form of determining whether the enrollment should be good or not.
I guess in the case of monthly recon, if you're passing it to me and you say that the paid through date should be, July 1st or whatever you're using, the end of the month, and my records are showing that person's paid through date is still sitting back on May 1st, I know I've got a problem because you're advancing and I'm not.
So
why aren't I advancing? I don't see any payments. Do we have a problem on our side that we've got some unapplied cash that you've sent us that we couldn't somehow, link up to that particular policy, or is it something on our side? And also, we were considering, and I know you're going to have a whole other meeting on letters and notifications, but if we think we are this person's in arrears, and what if there is some disconnect between us and you think they've been paying, and so you haven't been sending any notification letters, that we were potentially going to send a letter saying, hey, you might want to contact the exchange. We notice your account is past due, and you may want to, contact the exchange if you feel that's an error or something like that. But yeah, I mean, if you're showing a paid through date that we don't think it should be at yet, then that's going to send the red flag to us that something's amiss.
So Steve, if a person is less than 30 days behind payment, or between 30 and 90 days behind payment, or finally 90 days behind payment, how is a carrier notified for each of those circumstances that they're in that period? Because they handle those accounts differently for each of those periods. So how do they know that they're at that point?
Well, if my paid through date is still sitting on May 1st, and it's now August, that I know that we have not been paid, and that they may want to contact the exchange.
So it's the paid through date on the 834 file that notifies them.
Well, the paid through date wouldn't.
Well, I mean, that's a stickler for us, that if your paid through date is different than what we think it should be, then somehow you're advancing and we're not, and we haven't received payment, so there's something wrong, too, in that case.
No, yeah, I understand that, Lisa. I'm trying to understand, and this might just be me as not having been enough in the details. How does a carrier know when to pay claims and pin claims based on the APTC 90-day rule?
I think every carrier may handle a little bit differently, but
No,
we would,
Lisa?
our
I'm trying to, I'm sorry, I'm trying to ask Choice that question. I want to.
okay, I'm sorry, I thought you were saying Lisa. Okay.
No, I'm sorry. I want to. I'd like to have a better understanding because this really should be a system-wide thing. We should provide a standard notification to carriers system-wide. So I want to know: is it an 834 or an 820 file or some other process that lets them know when to pay claims, when to pin them, and when to terminate?
So I'm going to go back to what I think Lisa was going to say. It's carrier specific. They're going to know that someone is on APTC. If they do not receive premium for that first month and then goes on to the second month, they would determine that the claim should be pended.
So the 834 file will show that they're APTC,
That,
right?
yes.
So that lets them know.
And the 820 file will show that they didn't pay.
Correct.
820, so they're only going to get an 820 for those that paid. So
Right.
in
So
their
by
system,
default.
by default, they're not going to have that premium.
So then,
Now-
if they don't have that premium,
Yeah.
they do need to reconcile. Don't they need to reconcile that monthly, or is that a different process?
That's where we're saying that reconciliation, because of business rules, needs to take place slightly outside of that initial month, right? Whether that's 60 days, whether that's 90 days, because that individual may come in and pay on the 12th of the month instead of the 1st, and you'll receive payment back, and you'll now have a new paid through date in your system because you've updated and posted a payment into your financial management system, indicating you can then pay claims for that month.
So in the case of a July premium that's due July 1st, and they haven't paid, and so they have in their system paid through date of June 30th at that point, and they're all right. It's within the 30 days. They get to August 2nd or August 1st. Well, really August 1st, right?
Right.
They have not received payment yet.
Correct.
And so we have not yet sent a file, an 820 file, and a payment for that person.
Correct.
So their systems would automatically say, okay, you have to start pending claims,
Yep.
is what it should happen.
Correct.
Now, the reconciliation for that would happen when?
For a July 1 payment, it would occur October, end of September.
And so I think what they're concerned about is if there's something that is mixed up in there. I mean, maybe they're relying on the system only to do this, but they wouldn't catch an error. Let's say that they thought that they were paid.
Vice versa. They thought that they weren't paid, started pending claims that they shouldn't have pended, they should have been paying all along. Because they didn't have
Well,
an advance pay through date.
And that would be for the individual. On the
Yeah.
carrier side, the risk is they thought they got paid for that person, did not do a reconciliation, and so then they are so they're paying claims for that person. So I think that's the side of it.
And I would go with your suggestion, John, for the initial go live, is that we reconcile immediately.
Very regularly.
Very regularly.
Very
yeah.
regularly, because we're going to have to catch any holes that are in any programming or anything like that. So initially, I would say we reconcile immediately and have open communication and dialogue to make sure that we're all on the same page. Anything else, even beyond this, call center wise or whatnot, we can have that discussion on a bi-monthly or monthly basis with each carrier to see what their concerns are or if there are any gaps, and we can include this reconciliation process, and we can over time say, okay, I think we're comfortable enough and we understand this new world of the APTC and CSR enough to say, okay, let's push back to 60 or push back to 90. So we're open to that process. This is just our recommendation based on the experience we've had. But no, for a new program, I would say that it's important to do it immediately and
Okay, so
as necessary.
let's go with this. We are going to reconcile on a monthly basis, especially beginning, and if you feel that you need to do it more than that, we will work with you. We will create a goal to to end up at a 90-day reconciliation after 6 months of the program, but we will reevaluate at about month 3 or 4 to see how we're doing it, and we might push that back. Is that acceptable to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how we'll do that. We're going to do it monthly or even bi-monthly if you want. We will do whatever we need to do for that first 6 months to make this work, make everybody feel comfortable with it. We will make a goal to have that go to 90 days after 6 months, so in June. But if in the April or May timeframe we decide, you know what, we need to keep doing it this way until we get a little further down the road, then that's fine as well. All right, everybody shaking their heads.
Yes.
And based on the silence, I'm going to say that you guys agree with it on the phone as well.
Agreed.
Okay, excellent. I'm glad we got through
Page.
through page 5. Well, the good news is the next couple of slides are walking through the specific flows, and as we've done in the past sessions, rather than walk you through step by step, just if there's a specific decision box or specific point in the flow that you have questions about, we'd be happy to call that out and discuss as necessary.
So on the ones that say 90 days in arrears, can you fix those?
Sure. Yeah, we'll adjust the presentation to reflect the common decision here in regards to the discrepancy. So let's start with page 6. A lot of this is what we have been talking about the last 45 minutes or so. Any specific questions about this flow before we move forward to the APTC reconciliation? All right.
I have a question related to the paid through date before we move on to APTC.
And who is this?
This is Raj from Coventry Healthcare.
Okay.
So if you update the paid through date, will you be sending the update on a daily basis or on a monthly basis?
Well, you're going to receive daily 820s, which would advance paid through dates on your system on a daily basis.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking if we could get the paid through date just on the monthly recon for the membership, just so we could compare it to what we have, just to see if we're in sync on that monthly membership recon.
So you're going to get the premium on the 820. You're going to get the paid through date on the 834 monthly full file. So that between those two files, I think the paid through date allows for an additional reconciliation of premiums and any type of variance between the paid through date and the premium received would be a discrepancy that would need to be resolved.
Right. Yes. Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Right. Okay.
I'm glad we can make somebody happy.
Okay. Moving on to slide number 7, the APT CSR reconciliation support. Any questions in regards to this flow? Also, we'll update the 90 days in arrears here to match the discussion as well.
Right, so we don't know what the plan is for the Treasury on when they will be sending payment for APTC or CSR. Depending on that would depend on when you would want to reconcile those records, what you received from the feds versus what you're expecting to receive.
And I mean, in reality, that part is beyond what we have control over. We are really simply sending the 834 file that we send to you. We're sending on to the feds, and I think that on the APTC side, I believe that the monthly amount that you get from the feds is based on that 834 file. For the CSR side, my understanding is that your actuaries come up with an estimate on the amount of, this is my understanding, doesn't mean it's right, I think I read this somewhere, but my understanding is your actuaries come up with an estimate on the amount of cost sharing reduction that should be on a per member per month basis. So while they would take the 834 file and the enrolled plan, cost share and reduction plan into account. It's based on your actuarial estimates on what you should receive on a per member per month basis. I think that's how it works, and then I think it's reconciled at the end of the year. But again, our whole role in that is to simply send an 834 file with that person's enrollment. So how that works on the back end, unfortunately I can't give you much more than what we have here.
With one caveat, on the 834, there's also a place for you to send the CSR amount. Well, just two caveats. And then the other one is for APTCs. So let's say you send me an 834 and you say I'm supposed to get $60 a month, and I keep getting payments from the Fed for $50. There may come a time that I can't resolve with the Fed because they're just saying, well, this is what we have on record, and I'm saying, well, this is what I have on record. We're going to have some process to go back through the exchange because it may be that the exchange either needs to send an updated 834 to the issuer or an updated 834 back to the Fed because somehow we're out of sync. And the only one that's going to might possibly be able to resolve that for us would be the exchange.
Right, and that's exactly what this flow is describing.
Okay, good.
So we have
Now back to the CSR. You said that we send the CSR amount. What is?
There's on the FFE on the 834. I'm not an 834 expert in all the elements, but FFE keeps saying that they're going to send the CSR amount too in the 834.
This is Baji from EDI team. Yes, we will be sending the APTC amount and the CSR amounts in the member reporting category loop.
Right, and you're right. The issuers do submit that to the Fed, I think in the filing somehow, but they're still storing that, and then they're saying this is what the CSR will be.
So
just to confirm what I heard, Nevada Exchange will be sending the APTC and CSR dollar amounts in full 834 full file, sorry.
Well, you did hear that from Lisa Kelly at Anthem. You have not heard that yet from the exchange.
The EDI technical folks confirmed that is in there. We will need to validate and make sure that we are in fact sending that, the CSR amount. I know we're sending the CSR variation.
We're sending the plan that they're on.
Right, the variation,
and the APTC amount.
And the APTC amount.
But not necessarily the CSR dollar amount.
Correct.
We have to verify that.
Yeah.
And on the APTC side, there is both the amount of APTC for which they're eligible and the amount of APTC that they claim.
Yes.
Right? Because they can claim less.
Correct.
Okay. So.
How about the payment?
I'm sorry?
How about the payment? Does it come directly from Treasury or is it from Exchange?
Payment.
The payment comes from the Fed. It comes
from Treasury.
Yeah. The amount, the APTC amount and CSR amount that you're reimbursed comes directly from the Feds.
So the transaction is between Fed and the carrier, and Exchange is not involved in that transaction?
Generally, except for where there are reconciliation issues that you can't resolve and you need us to resend an 834 file either to the Feds or to you.
And that's the process that Slide 7 is discussing.
Okay, thanks.
And if you guys are on side conversations, please mute your phones. Thank you.
Hi, this is Sajana. I have one question. Whether state subsidy amount is coming from UDA or not?
What was it? Can you repeat the question, please?
State subsidy amount. Is this value is coming from UDA? In this?
So for state subsidy, are you talking about for potential state mandates?
For this number,
actually, we can get APTC and state subsidy from UDA, right? We heard like that, but we don't have that field in 834 for state subsidy.
You know, it's the other subsidy amount in the 834.
Thanks,
Lisa. Those member responsibilities, APTC, and then other subsidy amount, and to make sure. If they'd had it, I believe they would be passing it there.
Yeah, so we are building our system to accommodate the other subsidy, the state subsidy for due to state mandates. And we will, if there ends up being a state mandate, we will remit that to the carrier with the individual's payment. We need to work on that piece a little bit. We will actually, if that happens, we'll have to have a separate account of some type at the state level that we get general fund for to do that. And I don't think that the legislature has thought that far into it. So that will be a complication that we'll have to deal with, but we will make sure that you get that other subsidy amount, that state mandate amount. My understanding following the bills at this point, there are two bills that could have potentially had a state mandate. One was about autism and one was acupuncture, and both of those bills died in committee on last Friday. That doesn't mean that they can't be resurrected in another manner somehow, but it does not appear that the state of Nevada will have another state mandate. Again, we're building it because at some point we're sure that we will. We're sure that we will have that, but as of right now, it doesn't appear that Nevada will have that. We will make sure that it's remitted on that other subsidy amount piece.
On board.
Is APTC and CSR applicable to shop exchanges too?
No. No, shop exchange, all you have is the employer portion and the employer portion and the employees portion.
So here, I'll go here, so you can see it.
Thank you.
Went out.
All right. Again, if you're having side conversations, please be sure to mute your phone. We have a question in the room here.
Yes, I wasn't here last week, so maybe I missed this, but how is prompt pay legislation going to be looked at with us being able to hold claims now because people might not pay for 90 days? So carriers are getting fined for not paying claims on time if we don't pay them with a fully acceptable claim that comes into the carrier. Are we going to be held liable for that prompt pay legislation that's here in Nevada?
So the question is, the prompt pay legislation that's in Nevada, is the carrier going to be held liable for not paying claims during that PIN period? Anybody can sue anybody, so who knows? My understanding, though, is that typically federal law trumps state law, and that we have a federal regulation on the books that says that you shall PIN claims after between the 30 and 90 days. So I'm not a lawyer. You'll have to talk to your legal counsel about it. But if it were me, I would say, well, you know what? We got to comply with federal law. We are paying them when we can, but they're pended because the person hasn't paid their premiums.
Okay. And that's just sitting still in front of you.
But again, anybody can sue anyone. So.
Thank you.
Are these loosely segmented elements of that?
All right. Any other questions on the APT-CSR reconciliation before we move on to the general reporting requirements slide? Okay. So moving on to slide 9, wanted to specifically look at the requirements that are from a statutory perspective, either under ACA requirements or state requirements to be reported to various entities for approval and oversight. This table is not an exhaustive table of reporting requirements, but there are, over the next 4 slides, a list of them. We have indicated where appropriate the regulatory body who needs to receive the data, as we see that. The frequency and method of these are still being worked out between the various entities, be it exchange or DOI, or even in some cases HHS. So we expect to be able to provide further guidance and further direction in regards to this as we receive guidance and as the timing, frequency, and methods for submission of that data are firmed up from both the systems and from a regulatory perspective.
So a lot of this information is required during the plan certification process, so you'll need to provide an attachment in your binder or template or whatever the correct terminology is. We are working. We've been working on a checklist with the Division of Insurance on what types of things need to be checked in your submissions for plans to certify QHP, and it goes based off of there are certain things that you need to do as a carrier. There are certain things that you need to do for each product line for PPO versus HMO, and then there are certain things that you have to do for the plans themselves. So We will be posting that on our carrier onboarding website in the next couple of days. We're just doing some final touches on that, and it includes a lot of the information in here. So my guess is at least on an annual basis, you'll need to provide this information. Some of it is simply attestation or pointing to a location on your website where you can find it, and some of it you'll need to provide a report itself. Or if you had that report on your website, you could point to it. The documentation will it'll be clear enough in that documentation, and maybe at the next meeting or the meeting after we can discuss that certification checklist as well.
Transaction created.
Yeah, I think we actually have, in 2 weeks, we have a planned certification network adequacy onboarding session discussion planned. Okay. All right. So assuming that there are no specific questions on slides 9 through 12, if there are, we can do our best to answer them. Otherwise, as John indicated, guidance forthcoming. Any questions about those reporting requirements before we move on to the file transfer, the EDI questions, where we can have some of our technical folks start answering the details of the EDI? I know there's some burning questions out there, and we promised to have a representative here to answer them. So, any questions before we move on?
So the only thing I want to add to that is if the carriers would please do for us is to provide questions and thought around the reporting so that we can understand what you're thinking and what you're expecting in this area so that we can start formulating some of the rules and file layouts and requirements for the section.
Yeah, if there are specific things that you need in your reporting, that we may not have thought about them. We need to make sure that those data elements are built into our system if there's something that we really need to have. And it's much easier to build them in now than it will be to build them in after we go live. So, and you can send that again to the carriers@exchange.nv.gov email address.
Okay. All right, moving on to slide 14. So these are, this is not new information. We've tried to present this in almost every session at some level. But to reiterate, for enrollment, it would be EDI 834. 5010X220A1 is the specific version. It mirrors that of the federally facilitated exchange for all intents and purposes. So from a timing standpoint, the exchange will transmit enrollment information to the issuer, a daily change file, and that'll occur Monday through Friday, and a monthly full file, as we've talked about previously, for membership reconciliation.
When will the monthly full file be sent?
It should be the first business day following the end of the month.
Okay.
Wow. But we're probably going to make that same question. Will you show me?
Can everyone make sure their phone's on mute? We're getting some background chatter.
Transaction. Right. So,
all right.
I'm still fighting.
Moving on. The EDI 820, again, also following the 5010 standard X306 for premium payment. The exchange will transmit payment information to the QHP issuer on a daily basis. That's Monday through Friday, excluding bank holidays. I think we want to make that as a general kind of caveat that bank holidays, you're not going to get ACH. Those will be delayed by a day just because of timing and notch clearing and those kind of things. And then that's where it's followed by the accompanying ACH. And obviously, if we're not receiving payment posts from our bank, we're not transmitting a 820 indicating payment until we see those payments come in. So that's the bank holiday piece there.
So a question on that. Previously, you said that the 834 would always be accompanied by 820. So what happens on those bank holidays?
No, we've never indicated that an 820 would always be followed with an 830. You will get each of them on a daily basis.
For the initial enrollment.
For the initial enrollment, correct. For initial enrollment, you would. But not for a standard daily change file.
Right, but they're just two files that we send that day.
Correct. So. Yeah, you're going to get one daily 834, one daily 820. And
so the daily 834 is for new enrollments.
Correct.
And then once you're not new anymore, then you'll always be on the monthly file unless you terminate or something like that. There's a change
You have
in
a change,
status.
correct.
Does that make sense?
But if the paid through date is updated, that also will be on 834, not on 820, because you're not the new member.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well.
Okay.
So yeah, so so you're not a new member. You'd get, in the middle of the month, you get a payment. That'll go over in the 820 file.
Right.
And then on the monthly file that you get, the full file, you'll see the new 834 full file with, for that member, an updated paid through date.
Okay, thank you.
And
So the initial enrollment, the initial enrollment file would be sent. If the effective date is first of the following month? What is the latest date it will be sent?
It will be transmitted on a daily basis. So any enrollment activities or life events or any changes in membership that occur during that business day or appropriately over the weekend will be transmitted on the next daily delta or change file that is sent.
So if
this is for the first initial enrollment.
Right. So let's say somebody on October 10th enrolls in a plan. Not only do they enroll, because they're not really enrolled until they effectuate payment, right? So they've enrolled it. They've gone through the application. They're eligible. They enroll. They remit payment. That enrollment is good. So that night, you're going to get an 834 file that, assuming that they have to make a full payment. So it'd have to be for the first month. So they would have a paid through date of January 31st, with an enrollment effective date of January 1st. I think there's an effective date in there as well.
Yes.
So there'll be effective dates.
Yes.
So it'll be an effective date of January 1st, a paid through date of January 31st, and there will be then you'll also receive an 820 file that says this is the amount of the premium received.
Correct.
Okay. What happens in case of a shop exchange?
From a shop exchange perspective, it follows the same pattern. They would have through December 15th to make that final payment for a January 1st effective. You'll receive the 834 with the group membership information, and then you'll receive the 820 with the full premium for that first month's group bill. It would also include the effective date of January 1st and the paid through date of January 31st.
Okay, thank you.
By member.
By member, correct. Okay. Electronic payment file. An electronic payment file will be used by the issuer to transmit payments to the exchange. This is what we talked about a little bit in the last session when we started solutioning for if an individual makes a payment to the issuer. We had put some comments out there in regards to that the issuer has, they can choose to redirect individuals to the exchange to make the payment, or they can facilitate the payment. Either way, we're asking the issuer to act purely as a cash handler, receive the payment, and then transmit that via an ACH to the exchange, along with the remittance detail that you receive from the individual. The exchange will then post that payment accordingly and send an 820 to the carrier to indicate that payment has been received within your systems. And then it would also, on the monthly full file, indicate the updated pay-through date.
Now, is this electronic payment file sent on a daily basis or weekly?
So that hasn't been determined,
Yeah.
but we would suggest
Daily.
Yeah, we talked about this. I think this was at our first or second carrier onboarding meeting. There was concern about how we were setting up the process. Because we're doing individual billing, we recognize it creates some different challenges, and many of you expressed concerns about receiving payment versus us receiving payment, and I think it was nearly unanimous, and I could be wrong, but most of you said, you know what, we're just going to send you the payment to process and move on from there. This isn't an issue when you're in the middle of the month, really, because during the middle of the month you're not talking about terminating coverage and stuff. Where the issue lies is at the end of the month when somebody maybe hasn't paid by the due date. And so for your non-APTC folks, depending on whatever process that we finalize here based on your input, for the APTC folks, when you get to that 90th day, or the 30th day for pending claims, that could be an issue. And so it probably makes sense at those points to make it a daily file. And maybe it doesn't make much of a difference at certain times of the month, but during the end of the month, I would say that we'd want to make it daily and have pretty good communication between the insurer and the exchange to make sure that people are getting the proper credit for those payments.
Right, and I guess thinking about it, we want it daily so that we can update the record. If a customer goes to the portal and looks at the records to look at their pay-through date, they want to see that.
Okay, you're welcome. Bye.
Okay.
Okay. Does that apply to both individual and shop?
I don't believe SHOP would be made to the carrier.
There's no requirement that the employer pay. There's no requirement that we allow an employer to pay the carrier directly. That was only for the individuals. And the whole idea on the employer side, we have premium aggregation that has to come to the exchange. They cannot send it to, other than the package plans, they really can't send it to a specific carrier because they've got, potentially we got 8 or 7 different health insurance carriers on the line today, 6. It could potentially go to all 6 carriers, so it would not make sense to send it to the carrier. So employers are required to send it directly to the exchange.
But if it does happen, we can use the same process to handle them sending the money back to us.
Or should we refund directly to the group?
If we refund directly to the group, then they'll know for the next time. We can do that, but it could delay or it could cause.
I think that you need to reject payments from the group. I think they need to learn real fast that it needs to go to the exchange.
Yep.
It just doesn't make sense to send it to a carrier. I mean, I don't think that Anthem would be happy that United is getting money that should be going to Anthem, right, or Hometown Health, right? So I think you need to reject it and say you need to pay the exchange. You're a group.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there are going to be times where things happen. You get a check, you process it for some reason, and you got to make it work from there. But I would say, refund the group and tell them they got to pay the exchange directly.
Okay. Moving on to slide 15. Yep.
So, do you have a definition of what that electronic payment file format is?
So
we'll provide it during the individual.
So in looking at each of the individual issuers' processes, that's kind of a decision point for you as an issuer. So during the individual engagement, we will work with you again, much like on the reconciliation. We are going to establish a specific communication channel for the exchange and with the issuer in regards to how that's going to be handled, and develop an SOP between the exchange and the issuer specifically to that issuer's implementation. So the information that can be provided and how that's transmitted will be part of that individual implementation engagement. Okay. Any questions? We do have our EDI team on the line, so if there's any questions specifically regarding the 834, 820s information, or where information is going to live in certain loops, those kind of things, we have that team on the line that can answer those questions.
This is Lisa, and I just had one question, and I don't know if it's an EDI question or more of a exchange question, but on the monthly recon file for membership, the FFE has provided us elements that they will do discrepancy reporting on. So if there's some elements on that are on the 834 that they're not going to, and I don't know which ones they are, but they've said we're going to compare on the subscriber first name, subscriber last name, home address. Maybe they're not comparing on mailing address. They're going to and report on discrepancies for certain values. Are you all looking at specific elements that we need to track, or are you just going to say 834 in its entirety, any discrepancies that we send, we're going to want to report on and figure out why we're out of sync? And the second part of it is they're also saying for particular information like product or coverage, health coverage, the health coverage loop, they actually want history. They want to go back to maybe the effective date of the benefit year, so back to January 1st. And every time they're looking at the recon files, they're saying, I'm going to look at that recon file for health coverage on what they've had throughout the year from the beginning of January all the way to current day. So if you've had 3 product changes, I'm going to make sure that all of those dates and everything align historically for this benefit year between the issuer and the exchange.
So there is, I think there's 2 aspects to that. One of them is there's the reconciliation that the exchange is looking to do from a compliance standpoint with the issuers, and I think that's what you're hitting to from the FFE side. And there's also the reconciliation aspect of looking at is the membership, is the enrollment record correct, and is the premium correct? I mean, those are the direct factors that impact the operations from the issuer side, and from the exchange side, most directly impact the member. So initially we are focused on those primarily elements with eligibility and the premium amounts from a reconciliation standpoint. There may be other fields that the exchange begins to look at from a compliance standpoint over the time as the program evolves and matures.
When you need mailing address type things so that they can provide cards and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
So will you guys be providing a list of those elements that you're going to be, in particular, looking on the monthly recon that they provided us a list and said, here's everything for monthly recon we're going to be reconciling against from, the information provided on 834. And it's obviously not complete on all the information, but it gives us an idea of, what they're going to be, potential reporting on discrepancies and also, what we need to make sure we extract. So
I'm going to answer this a little bit differently. So as you know, the expectation from a reconciliation standpoint, based on our presentation and what we have recommended, was that we are sending a full file to the carrier, and the carrier is going to be validating that against the carrier system. So there's no plans in place to look at elements. It would be up to the carrier to determine which elements that the carrier would look at for reconciliation of the carrier's system data. Now, with that being said, we've also talked about possibly changing that process and reviewing that process. So if that's the case, then we would have to start looking at which data elements we want to validate and which data elements we want sent over in a full file so that we can reconcile those items. For example, I would say something that we wouldn't want would be provider information, right? So we wouldn't want you to send that back to us because the member could update their provider directly with the carrier, and we would only have that initial provider selection, not an updated provider selection. So that could be different.
You're going to allow them to select a provider and pass it to us?
That's the plan.
Good.
Yep.
Good. So when you send that, though, is it just a snapshot of how that person or policy looks on the day you do your extract? Or like I said, are you going to provide historical information on, here's a snapshot of his address and everything as of today, but I'm going to also pull all the historical information back to January 1st on his coverage?
No, it's the full file is an extract of all active membership, so that would not include anyone that has not been completely enrolled. So those that have not made initial payment would not be an active record, so they would not go over on those files. So it's anyone that's been terminated would not go over on those files. So it is a snapshot at the moment. We run that file of all active membership in the exchange system.
Okay, that leads me to my next question. How are we ever going to know that we're in sync? You've told me to terminate somebody, or I told you to terminate somebody this last month, and we assume if you send me that file and he's not on it, how do I know we're in sync on the termination end date? If I don't, you see it to compare it, to say, yep, I got that 834, you told me to cancel him on July 1st or June 30th or whatever your date is, and you know what, we're right in sync. I did cancel him, he is off the system, but if I don't see your record, I'm not going to be able to validate that I took the correct action as far as the termination date.
Right. So the active membership. So the full file is to determine the active memberships in sync. You're going to get an 820 for terminated members. So if you should 834 to show that the active membership is in sync. If the 834 is also going to come over daily on a change file, which will provide terminations. When you reconcile, if you have a different termination date than what we have, what you're going to see is that if the termination date you have is later than ours, we're going to have sent you premium. We wouldn't have sent you premium, and you're going to be missing that premium. And so we'll say, hey, so part of that reconciliation of premium, you're going to say we're missing that premium, and we're going to come back and say, no, we terminated it on this effective date. So that will be handled by that reconciliation. On the converse of that, if the termination is earlier in your system and we send you premium for it, you're going to say, hey, I have premium for this member for this month, but we show in our system that it's terminated earlier. And then we'll send over a response saying that the actual termination date of that member is this date. Does that answer your question? Does that
answer my question? It's kind of a roundabout way of doing it, but fair enough.
Now, Lisa, you said you only had one question. I think that was. I'm kidding.
I only when I say it all in the same breath, they're one question.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that's the criteria.
Yeah,
one breath.
got it.
All right.
7 colons in there in between different parts.
All right. So any other questions about the transmission files before we move on to the acknowledgement files on slide 15?
We talked maybe a couple of months ago, I think in March, about what time of day those files are going to come, and the response was it would be after the exchange's call center closes each day. What are the call center hours, and what time should we expect the files to come?
So I want to clarify the comment that was made, which is it would be our expectation to send the file after the call center closes, just so that we capture majority of that day's transaction activity. However, and
the call center hours are 8 to 8 on Monday through Friday, and I believe 9 to 3 on Saturdays and Sundays. Although we're not sending files on Saturdays and Sundays, so, or are we? No, because we're not sending 820s either.
However, we did also indicate in that same meeting that we would like to work with the issuers to understand what your batch process timelines are, so that we can put together a recommended schedule, which may be universal for all issuers, or depending upon the feedback that we receive in your individual carrier implementation meetings, we may do issuer-specific timing with a general cutoff time frame that would be across the exchange. So that's the timing of those specifically. We will work out with each of the issuers individually, but ideally we want to send it later in the evening or even after midnight to capture the prior day's activity.
And have you been able to find a place in the 834 for the broker information? I know that was an issue a couple of months ago.
Yeah, so we will be able to send over a producer ID. So we've got our EDI folks on. Can you either Lloyd or Balaji, if you could indicate if you know the loop and segment where we're going to be sending the broker information on the 834?
Yeah, sure. It will be in the 1000C loop, which will have the broker ID information.
Sorry, could you say that again?
It's in 1000C loop, so it's after the sponsor, after the employer, and after that comes the broker ID information. So we'll be passing the broker ID and not the U.S. federal tax ID.
So
I think so, everybody's not.
Well,
I've
what
never heard what segment it was in, but it's my ear.
What is the broker ID though? Is it their personal?
No, it would be your. It would be the NPN, the broker's NPN ID,
Yeah, the
national producer number.
Okay.
Yeah. I go back. Issuers still had their own IDs. Now it's all NPN. Sorry, was there a question? Okay.
The E20, the format is same for both shop exchanges and individual exchanges.
It is the same format. Yes.
It will be individual remittance details, not the summary remittance detail.
Can you say that again, please?
820 allows for organization summary remittance and the individual remittance. So for shop exchange, are we following individual remittance or summary remittance?
For the 820 transaction, from the EDA perspective, it's still under discussion on which format to be used. We will let you know about the 820 transaction.
Okay. And in the 834, do you capture any of the carrier's information? For example, carrier assigned their own member IDs and group IDs.
Yeah. Hang on. We've actually got some questions specifically in regards to that that we'll answer in regards to that. So, talking about the 834 process for group IDs. So, all right.
And if we don't answer that after these questions, please,
we'll
ask your question again.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So before moving on, can we go back to the shop and clarify on the group level information that you'll be sending over to the carriers, if that's going to be in the FFE model, the XML format or not?
We will be using the 834 to transmit the group name and group TIN, their tax ID.
So group name and TIN is all that you'll be sending?
That is correct.
What is the FFE?
This is Susan Robert with WellPoint. And I guess we really don't feel like that's enough information because just for like MLR rebates, we would have to have the group's address and contact in order to be able to send out checks.
I think we have the sponsor information, which is the 1000A loop, which will have the employer details there. And I'm not pretty sure it will have the address information there, but I'm pretty sure it will have the sponsor ID.
It does not have the group address, and we would also need like broker information to know who the group's broker was for commission payments.
Okay.
We need the number of members that are in a group in order to determine COBRA, state continuation, Medicare secondary payee for claims, TEFRA, non-TEFRA. We have a lot of reasons we need group demographics.
So a couple of things. So could you do me a favor and send me that list? Send it to the carriersexchange.nba.gov, the list of things that you need so that we can address each of those items. Certainly the MLR rebate check, we understand that. So in that file, we're sending them the TIN and the employer name. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to communicate the rest of that information? What is the FFE doing?
They have an XML data service to send it over. They're living outside the bounds of the 834 and 820.
Oh, they're changing what they...
Right.
Okay.
Because the 834, the new version, doesn't allow for additional spots to put the group information, so you can't send it in the 834. Right. So one of the things that we currently do for MLR and for CMS for Medicare reporting is we send a separate report to each carrier with the information required for that type of reporting. So that's an option that we can look at doing to communicate that information.
All right, so we agree that we need to send that information to you in some manner. Could you please provide us that email with the list of things the reasons that you need that employer's information? Going to the COBRA item, I don't think I don't think COBRA can be administered by carriers anymore. And the simple reason is if an employer chooses the silver metal tier, and there's 6 carriers in the shop exchange, and each employee can choose 6 different plans. While you go from active to terminated status as an employee, you can continue with your current coverage. But when you have open enrollment during that first 18 months, you have to have all the same options as everybody else in the plan. And WellPoint cannot administer COBRA for Hometown Health or for United or vice versa. So I think the COBRA discussion is a national discussion. We need to figure that out altogether. But I think we're going to work through that piece of it. I don't see how a carrier can administer COBRA anymore.
And this is Susan Robert from WellPoint, and I agree with you completely, and I've pushed back with CMS on that statement as well. But again, there's just a lot of reasons why we believe we do need the group demographic and that type of information to set up a group in order to administer things correctly on our side.
Absolutely, and we recognize that. We will work on a way to figure out how best to communicate that with you. Give us a couple of weeks to figure that out. But could you please send me that list of reasons that you need it so that we can make sure that we fully understand what you need? So
yeah, Andrew Dubens will be sending that to you on behalf of WellPoint.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So the data elements that you need and why you need them will be very helpful.
So we're gonna recommend that you guys follow the XML, the FFE XML file. It has enough information that we can set up a group and do those MLR rebates and broker commissions and things of that nature.
All right. If you could just again send all that to us so that we have a good starting point. Obviously, we are. I think Steve has already seen some of the XML stuff in the FFE, but it would be great to have that list from you as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. I'm going to skip over the page 15 of the slide, the acknowledgement files, because I want to make sure we have some time to get through the questions that were submitted via the issuers. More than likely, we won't have sufficient time before the noon cutoff to get through all of the questions that were submitted, but we will be posting the answers to those as part of our consolidated Q&A. So we'll try and get through as many as we can here.
Put into the EDI one first, then some, because I noticed you would just in there kick you out.
Is that a question for us, or is that a side conversation? Side conversation. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So there was a couple questions in regards to fees that came up from the in the last meeting in terms of how will exchange fees be communicated, how will they be collected, and wanted to just kind of walk through that process at a high level and then answer any questions in regards to that. So the one of the questions specifically, I'm just going to outlay the scenario. So the exchange fee is $495. The premium is $100 plus the $495 for a total of $104.95. The rates that need to be filed are the loaded rates, including the exchange fee. Those are what will be shown to the consumers, are the fully loaded rates that encompass the exchange fees. The consumers and or groups will be billed based upon that, in this example, $104.95. The exchange and the administrators will deduct the $4.95 from the premium that's remitted prior to submission via the 820 to the issuer. So it'll be a net payment of the fees to the issuers. The premium.
Will that fee be in a separate record on the 820 file?
Because if he needs to run normally
the fee will not be in a separate record. It's per member per month.
No, I'm just saying. I'm not.
So with that, you realize that dramatically complicates this whole reconciliation discussion we've had for the past hour and a half. Because now we're going to have to reconcile the payment, the APTC, plus now a third portion of the payment for one member's premium.
Yeah, with the FFE, what they're doing with fees is they would send us the full payment like that for the member, so it's $104, and then at a program level, they would say, here's all the fees we're subtracting.
The FFEs are not conducting billing, so they're not collecting fees on behalf of the carriers, though.
Yeah, I understand that, but when you're taking the fees back instead of subtracting it directly from the premium payment you pay. There's all the fees at a program level that you need to owe us, because aren't there fees due for off-exchange members?
Yeah, so I see what you're saying. So you're saying that let's say that 10 people pay $104.95, and so we send a file that says these 10 members paid $104.95 each. So what's that? $1,049.50.
Yep.
And then we send a separate single record in the 820 file that says, and we've taken off $49.50 for those individuals. Is that?
Right, and then you would reconcile that amount, like take that total amount and reconcile it to your actual deposit. No, they don't have.
So you're still saying deduct it from the ACH the nightly ACH transaction, but don't deduct it don't deduct it for each record in the file, but deduct it as a separate line item as fees.
It's really fulfilled the full payment. We need to acknowledge that on our side, that they've paid exactly what they should have, including the fees. But then the exchange is then going ahead and subtracting out what we owe them, because I thought, and I don't know, Nevada may be different, but I did, like, exchange fees are across even off exchange, so but I don't know that.
All right, yeah, so that makes sense. Let us take a look at that, and we will bring this question back next week with a more refined answer.
Is there a reason why, since it's up for discussion, is there a reason why the carriers couldn't be invoiced for the amount, either monthly or weekly or however frequently?
And then pay us after we invoice you?
Yes. And we won't ask for the 90-day grace period, first month free, 60 days afterwards to end our claims or anything like that.
But that'll be our outbound pull. Okay. So what I'll give you
let us take a look at that. Let us look at that. Okay.
All over there.
Okay. Okay, so we make a recommendation to create that folder structure to them.
Right.
Okay.
Right, what is already there?
So I want to jump to the question that was asked next regarding to will we be transmitting carrier-specific member IDs? So the exchange is not requiring an 834 from an issuer to effectuate coverage, unlike the FFE, because the exchange is handling billing, they're handling membership of record. So without a mechanism to communicate from the issuer back to the exchange a member ID, the exchange will not be passing a group or member-specific identifier in either the 834 or 820 files. Now, we want to understand that. Obviously, there's additional overhead on both sides with a inbound 834 and the processing around that. So we're open to comments. Again, any in regards to that, if that presents a significant issue for the QHP issuers.
So just to clarify before the questions jump in, we're sending a unique identifier from the exchange. We are not passing back the carrier's member ID or group ID.
So from a customer service standpoint, if somebody calls the exchange, I'm just curious, what's your process to find John Smith? Because that John Smith isn't going to know what his exchange ID is.
Right. The other thing also, on our ID cards, we show our key ID. I don't know if we're going to require the exchange ID to be displayed on the ID card.
Yeah, so that's probably part of something that we're going to talk about a little more when we get into fulfillment and ID cards. But we would like to see the exchange ID provided to the member.
Yeah.
Okay. We can talk about that later.
Tell me about?
So what I can say.
So to answer the question, there's the Choices RX team in the call center is working out the details surrounding what identifiers the exchange will use when a member calls in to help identify that member rather than just their name.
The only problem, like you said, we're going to talk about the ID card later. If you start putting your ID on there and ID,
I don't know what the crosswalk.
Probably going to end up sending claims in with the wrong ID, and our systems aren't going to know who it is.
No laws over there.
Okay. Which is why we said we want to understand and have the discussion around that. Again, that's an area that we're working towards that fulfillment piece, and that's all part of the customer communication and the interaction that ties in heavily the following week with the call center and the customer support side of it. So we're putting some of this out there so that we can have the dialogue as we get there.
Your current business in Choice, do the ID cards have both the carrier's ID number for that person and the exchange ID number?
The cards do have the exchange ID in some cases, and in some cases they do not. So depending on the carrier, some of them do provide that ID.
Okay.
Okay. I would just. I get you. I'm not going.
All right. There was another question asked in regards to exchange member IDs. Are they unique to an individual, and will they be reused when an individual transacts? They're on the exchange, then they transact into the commercial market, then they become APTC eligible again and come back into the exchange. The answer is that it is a unique ID per individual, and we will be maintaining eligibility history for that individual based upon that unique ID, and will continue to transmit that unique exchange ID as an individual transitions on and off of the exchange as appropriate to the issuers.
But we'll never use that ID for anybody else.
That's correct. It's a unique ID to that person. It's a person ID in essence. Okay.
What is the size of that ID? What is the format of that ID?
You know what? I will need to get you an answer as to what the format of that ID is. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
We'll take a note and we will answer that in the follow-up Q&A. Okay. So there were a couple of questions that were asked specifically around how will carriers be able, what type of information will carriers have access to in the exchange system for reconciliation and the details around that. So in general, we will be providing the 834 as the primary source of truth for information in regards to enrollment and details around that. In next week's presentation, we will be having an open discussion regarding what the carrier appeal process looks like if you believe that the information that you're seeing in that 834 regarding an individual's eligibility is not correct or needs to be adjusted based upon information that you are seeing that would indicate ineligibility. So the 834 will be the primary source of truth for information regarding reconciliation unless there is an appeal of eligibility or premium decision that is shown within there once we work through that reconciliation process. There were a couple more questions that came into appeals. We're going to defer those questions to next week's session, specifically when we talk about the appeals process. But we have noted them and we'll incorporate them into the presentation. Go through here. Most of the questions I'm looking here we got ahead of time and we tried to answer them through the discussion or they came up here. Are there any other questions specifically on the phone in regards to the topics that we covered today?
Did we answer the question that we said hold off, it's in there?
Yeah, it was in regards to the broker information being transmitted on the group and member unique IDs being transmitted on the 834.
I have a question related to broker ID. Did you say that broker ID will be national producer number?
That is correct.
Or would it be carrier? Okay.
It will be the producer's NPN ID.
NPN ID. Okay, thanks.
And there are questions here?
Yep.
I have a question on the exchange fee. Since we can only charge for 3 children, what if there's a family that has 7 children, are the exchange fees gonna come out for all 7 children?
That was also my question.
See, look at
Let's, we have to look at that.
Okay.
Okay, I understand your challenges, it makes sense. Give us a week to consider
Okay.
that.
Great, thank you.
Can you repeat that question?
Oh, sorry, the question was, since the carriers cannot rate for more than 3 children in a plan, are we going to charge the $4.95 per belly button for the children beyond those three individuals? Obviously, from the one perspective, you cannot charge for them. So I would say, you would say, hey, you shouldn't hold me liable for them. On the other hand, you do have to cover their claims costs. And so there is an expense associated with that. So, but I get it. Let us go back and look at the finances and look at how that's supposed to work and see what latitude that we have to be able to discuss that. The other thing to keep in mind is there has been a process where we set the fees and set a regulation for the fees, and we've indicated there per belly button. So I would say that my initial reaction is there for each individual, but I do understand your concerns, so we need to look at that. And it may, if we decide that it needs to be something different, it may be a process that we have to go through to change that. And I'm not sure that process can be completed by June 7th. So
I have a similar question around the per member fee on those 90-day no payment, turn back 60. We're still responsible for those 30 days, so that's in question. Will we also be responsible for the monthly fee during those 30 days during that month?
yes, we want our money. Now the question was, will the carrier be responsible for the fee for the months that they weren't paid? And we have discussed that a little bit, but we're not sure of the answer to that one either. On the plus side, we do have establishment grant funding for the first year, and that could absorb that potentially. So we have to look at that. I'm not sure that would change in 2015 when we have to be self-sustaining. So again, give us a chance to look at that one as well, and we'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
So a question on the pending claims topic we talked about an hour ago or so. So the carriers to take action on the first of the month for anybody that has a premium tax credit status who did not pay, the carrier is to determine on that first of the month, hey, we need to switch that person to a penned status because they didn't pay for the first 30 days or the prior 30 days of coverage. So on that first of the month, because we are supposed to determine based on not receiving information, on that first of the month, do we take action on every member for whom we did not receive a payment? So we take one category of people, we put them into this pen status, take another category, and we terminate all those members who didn't pay?
Well, the issuer would never terminate coverage without an indication from the exchange to do so.
But we're depend based on not receiving information from the exchange to do so, correct?
For pending of claims.
What happens if the
Correct.
first of the month is a Saturday? And you're not going to send over an 820 with that payment until Monday?
The 3rd.
The 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be very cautious about throwing pending claims automatically on the first of the month if that first of the month is not a business day,
right,
or if it is a bank holiday.
Right.
So if it's a Saturday, we would have received the payment the night before because you're passing the payments to us same day, right?
Yeah, you should have received, if we received it on Friday,
right,
and if it was processed on Friday, we should,
that's the trick. We received and it was processed on Friday.
Well, are you pending claims based on payment, or are you pending claims based on paid through date passed in the monthly full file?
That's what we're trying to clarify in part, is what are you sending us, because you're telling us that we are to determine when to pen the claims.
Yeah, and I think we might need to look at the timing on that, whether it should actually be if that file should be sent on the first business day, or if it really should be sent at the last day of the month, no matter what. even if it's on a Saturday or Sunday,
Mhm.
so that they can.
Yeah. I was thinking the last business day, the night of the last business day of the month. That way.
Because they wouldn't have payment anyways at
That
that
monthly
point.
834 with
Yeah.
paid through date, would they be able to make their decisions depending
Right,
on
that way the carrier has it in hand and
Okay.
then can use the paid through date to determine.
pending claims.
So would that make sense to send the full 834 file that has a paid through date on the evening of the last business day of the month? That way you would have.
I don't know. I'm trying to think through it, and I haven't thought through it much. But if the 31st is a Sunday, then technically that person has until that Sunday to make their payment. And so would we be cutting off people 2 days early in that scenario? I haven't thought through this in detail either, so it's good discussion.
You know what?
And maybe we can talk about it.
And who is it that's talking right now?
This is Kyle at United.
Kyle. If you could, or have your folks look at that scenario compared to the federal regulation regarding the pending and terminating claims, or pending and terminating enrollment, and we'll look at it on our end as well, and we'll get together with you and we'll try to make sure that we have counted for that. If we need to change it from the first business day following the end of the month, we will let everybody know. We'll let everybody know regardless. We should have a conversation together. So.
Okay. So we're just about at time here. John, did you have any closing comments?
No, just a not a reminder, a follow-up. Just if you have concerns about the way we're doing things, please send us an email. Again, send it to the carriers at exchange.mb.gov so that everybody can look at it. If you don't feel like you're getting the appropriate customer service, which I don't think will be the case, but if you don't, please send it to me. If it's a higher level concern, man, you guys are just way off track, go ahead and send it directly to me, and let's discuss it. We'll get on the phone with you and make sure this works for everybody. We are not trying to be, the government ramming this down your throats. We acknowledge that we are requiring a lot of trust, and this is going to take some time to get to know each other and make this work appropriately. So we want to make sure that you feel comfortable with it. So please don't feel like that's the way it is and there's no question about it and too bad. Obviously, there are some things we will be doing individual billing. That has been a decision made by the board, so we have to work around that issue. But we want to work with you. We want to make this work for everybody.
All right.
That carrier's email is working. I've received some emails during this session, so know that we are monitoring them as a team, and we will work diligently to get those answers to you, and then update our consolidated questions and answers. I have to move the link around on the page where it's more appropriate, like was mentioned at the beginning. But rest assured, we are looking at them as they come in immediately.
Okay.
Can I ask one more quick question? Is the draft test plan available yet?
That one, I think we said that we would get it to you today or sometime around this week. We were looking at that, and it looks like we need a couple more weeks. From the email that I saw, it said May 1st. Is there a preliminary one that we could put out there that says, here's their start, but it's not done?
Draft.
There's the part of the challenges is pending some of the regulations, some of the file things that we've talked about from an EDI standpoint. Obviously, a testing plan around that is complex. But I think we can work on getting together maybe some dates when the issuers can expect testing. But we're still working on the details of the plan and getting a draft out there.
So you're concerned about putting a preliminary draft.
That has information that could change and isn't solid enough even in a draft state.
So can you at least provide the high-level test dates that we have?
I think that's certainly something that we can provide. Some testing, some windows of when the issuers can expect from a testing, and a lot of it is with the test plan. It's collaborative with the issuers because it's part of that one-on-one engagement. and how those processes flow and what the issuer's timings are around it and the details of that. So the test plan will be collaborative as we engage each of the individual issuers. All right, just a couple of housekeeping things before we wrap up. A reminder, our next upcoming sessions on April 24th is appeals and appeals processing. May 1st, certifications and network adequacy.
On network adequacy, the Division of Insurance has vetted with, I think, almost all of you, if not all of you, some network adequacy standards that they have proposed. As you are well aware by this point, the state does not have the statutory authority to create network adequacy market-wide. The exchange has the federal authority to create network adequacy requirements for qualified health plans. So while we are waiting for the statutory and regulatory authority to set network adequacy on a market-wide basis at the Division of Insurance, we will be setting network adequacy standards at the exchange level. So tomorrow there is a plan certification meeting that, and if you look on our website, at tomorrow 9:30, so you'll see the April 18th plan certification committee that has those network adequacy standards that the Division of Insurance is recommending. It would be the intent of the state to adopt standards that are those standards or very similar to it. These have to go through on the exchange side through the plan certification committee and the board, and so hopefully they will emerge the other side very similar to what they are now. But please, by all means, feel free to listen in on those meetings or provide your public comment.
All right.
And I'm sorry, one last thing. The board, we're going to be discussing these at the Wednesday board meeting next week, the April, I think it's 24th meeting in the afternoon. Typically, we do that at a normal board meeting on the second Thursday of the month, but we want to make sure these are done by the May 1st time frame. So these will be done tomorrow at plan certification meeting and next Wednesday at the board meeting. Sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. I was just going to recap the remaining two meetings there. We've got the fulfillment, ID card, plan collateral discussion currently scheduled for May 8th. And then customer service, public education presentation May 15th. And we're working on possibly kind of a collective catch-all follow-up for the week after for any topics that are relevant that we may not have had in our original schedule. So we'll update that as appropriate. So
actually, yeah, we will add two more meetings after the May 15th, the two following Wednesdays, just to follow up on items that are obviously still outstanding. Doesn't mean that we'll have both of them, but we'll schedule them anyways. The other thing is a lot of the items that we discuss, we'll talk to you each individually in the individual carrier exchange meetings, the individual meetings.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us either on the phone or here in Carson City, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.